So one of the things I try and do with these videos that I kind of keep in the back of my head is to mix in some current events relatively regularly, just to keep it relevant, timely, and practical, to kind of take the things that I'm thinking about, the principles, the frameworks, etc., and see how they tie to current day life, and if there's ways to apply them to actually, drive benefits for myself and hopefully for others. So with that said, one of the big stories that's in the news today, the last few days, is the death of George Floyd. So it's the African-American man that was killed by police during, I'm not sure exactly, I guess it was a traffic stop, but it was related to a counterfeit bill that he might have been using. But, without getting into the full details of the story, most of you probably already know it. That's not the full point of what I want to talk about here. What I want to talk about is what I was thinking about in terms of making a video around that. So obviously it's a current event. It's very relevant. It's very, I hesitate to say the word polarizing, but I think as a full event, it is polarizing, right? There's been lots of repercussions to it. The police officers have been fired. There's been lots of people speaking out. Obviously, there's a heavy component of race involved in this, and a number of civil rights activists and African Americans and white people and people of all over calling it out as another instance of racism kind of coming through in America. There's been looting and riots and violence and peaceful protests. There's been people on the right kind of speaking out about how the media is portraying it, trying to incite people. So there's lots going on. So naturally, it felt like a topic that maybe is one to discuss. And typically the way I'll think about these videos is I'll have a topic in my head and I'll be thinking about it throughout the day or a few days. And then when I get ready to record it, I'll really sit down and try and gather my thoughts around it. And what was interesting in this case is as I was gathering my thoughts, I was struggling. I was struggling to think about what the video would be. Because much as I preach, I try and practice what I preach. One of the things I think about for each video is, what's the objective? What's the key thing I want somebody who watches it to take away from it? What's the point, the insight, the learning, the lesson, whatever it is. And I was struggling with that. And I was trying to formulate my thoughts on it. And I was, obviously I've watched the video, I've read some of the articles, I've read some Twitter posts by different people about it. And I was taking that all in and again, trying to formulate what is it I want to say about this topic. And, typically that comes to me pretty quickly because I've been thinking about it and, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, but I get to a point where I feel like I have something valuable to say. And in this case, I wasn't getting to anything. There's, again, lots to talk about, lots to think about, lots to discuss, lots to question and understand. But I was trying to think about what do I have to, bring as an insight, a conclusion or a point of view on this. And again, there was nothing coming through directly. So I was about ready to scrap the idea and move on to a different topic. And then I started thinking about the fact that I had nothing to say about it, or at least, again, no insights to draw on it yet. And that made me start to think, is there something to that? And I'm reading a book currently called Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. And one of the chapters in the book is kind of very intuitively or simply named Slow Down and Think. And a lot of it's about, what you would expect intuitively. When it's an important, complex topic, you really, really need to slow down. Where there's so much information flying, you got to slow down and really digest it. And I started thinking about that in terms of this. And what I started realizing was, how important a principle like that is in this time. And we've talked in the past about how our brains want to jump to conclusions. We want to get to cohesive narratives. We need a story. We need something that makes sense. And I think in a situation like this, that potentially is the danger, right? We are super uncomfortable to be silent and think and try and make sense of things before we draw our conclusions, before we say something, before we form our opinions, before we make that post on social media. It feels so much more natural for us to have a viewpoint and to share it and to say, okay, this is what I think about this thing. It's so, again, unnatural, uncomfortable for us to not say anything, to think, to try and figure out, and to say, I just don't know yet. I don't know enough yet. Now, let me be clear. When I say this about this topic, I'm not specifically saying it about, I don't know if there was something wrong that was done here. I think the thing I would say with most certainty is, and I think most people would that have watched the actual video, that the thing I would say with the most certainty is that man didn't need to die, right? That did not need to happen. He should be alive today. I think, most reasonable people would say that with certainty. Once you start to move beyond that, then you get into varying degrees, I would say, of uncertainty. Now, that doesn't mean, that you can't have a view or be working through a view or any of those things. For example, what does this say about the state of kind of race relations and racism in America today, right? That is certainly a topic to be discussed. It is certainly something that's involved in this situation, in this event. How it plays into it exactly is something I would say I don't know yet. I would not vehemently disagree or say for certain that it's not at play. Without a doubt, I wouldn't say that. I think there's lots of things that indicate it is. But it's hard. It's hard to say this soon after it, what role it exactly did play. And that's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable even for me to say as I'm saying it, because, we want to say now. We need to know now. We need to make the conclusion now that this is what this meant, and this is the issue, and this is what it means we have to do. And there's all sorts of aspects of that. There's aspects of the looting that's going on and the rioting and the violence, and people want to draw immediate conclusions on that this is the issue or this is the problem. You're never going to solve this issue if when it happens that's how people react. They riot and they loot, etc. And I can understand that line of thinking, but again, in the same vein, there's too much I don't know yet to draw that conclusion. I've never had a family member of mine or a friend of mine killed by a police officer. I've never been African American and went through that experience or known people through that experience. So for me to say what the exact right reaction is or how I would do it, I don't know enough yet. And you can go down the line on aspects of this event in which I would say, I don't know enough yet to make a video, to draw insights, to speak to others about how I think they should be interpreting it or how they maybe should be thinking about it. And that's okay. It's uncomfortable. It's unnatural, but it's okay. It's okay to say that. I don't know yet, right? And I say that to, people just sitting at home every day, John Doe, who's watching the news and who's maybe posting on social media. It's okay to not have a view yet or not have a full view. You can feel an emotional reaction one way or another. You can feel all those things, but to try and put it in a box and say, here is the story. Here is what's going on here. It's okay not to do that. Likewise, if you are a media member or you are a public figure who has an active social media account or whatever it might be, it's okay to not know yet how you feel about this, what exactly happened, right? What exactly it means in the grander scheme of things, right? I've seen people saying, well, it's a ploy by the Democrats and the media to get people fired up before the election. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know enough yet. I've seen other people say that, it's just another instance of cops hunting down black men and just looking to kill them. Maybe, but I don't know enough yet to say that for sure. That's not to say either of those two things are right or wrong. I just don't know enough yet. So I would be doing more of a disservice than a service by speaking as if I did know, by not taking the time to think and really understand what this means and what I think is at play and what's happening. That's the move here. That's the move. We feel like we need action. We need voices. We need to speak. We need to let everybody know what I think and what's happening here. And you're missing this and you're missing that. And you don't understand this and you don't understand that. Most of us don't have enough information yet. We just don't know yet. And that is okay. Wait, as I intend to do. I intend to wait until I can understand better, hear more, gather more information, then try and say what this whole thing means and what the key takeaways are and what we should do going forward. It's okay. It's okay not to know.